Welcome to the Chain Effect Podcast, where a physical therapist and a dietitian married with 2 kids juggle the struggle of running a business, raising a family, and prioritizing our own health, all while trying to have as much fun as possible.
We're your hosts, Taylor Pope, Doctor of Physical Therapy, and
Caroline Pope, registered dietitian.
Together we own and operate a health facility, bringing together physical therapists, dietitians, personal trainers, and active recovery services to create what we call the Chain Effect.
Today, we are so happy to have my friend, Dr. Lauren McHenry, on today. She is a certified mental performance consultant through the Association of Applied Sports Psychology and a national certified counselor. She is the founder of McHenry Mental Performance, LLC, based in Atlanta. She consults with elite, college, and Team USA athletes and coaches across the country. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We are excited. We've been wanting to have you a long time, and Lauren and I go way back to high school.
Yeah.
Lots of student council together.
Wait, I didn't see in her bio, though, that she skated on Disney on Ice. Is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk about that.
That is true.
I was
legit.
honored to see that in, grad school way back. I was in grad school and she was traveling the world, right? You're traveling the world, doing Disney on Ice. And we saw you though. We got to see you, which was so fun.
You came to the show.
Yeah, when it was in Raleigh. And it was like a combo of Little Mermaid. I forget the combo that year.
Yeah, it was, do you remember Brave?
Yes.
The
I love
Scottish
that
movie that's not very popular anymore.
I thought it was awesome. We've been going back watching.
Yeah.
Did it get canceled?
It was one of the first female empowerment, shift of the Disney stories to where they don't have to end up with a prince.
Yeah,
really cool.
It was cool. We showed the boys that, I think, earlier this year.
Yeah, they liked it. Well, just going through this outline, I thought I knew a lot about the mental game of different things in the vagus nerve, but we're about to get educated here on the vagus nerve and all the different components here.
We're gonna pick her brain. And it's funny because in preparation for this and trying to start the outline, Lauren had shared with me that her parents sent her a big box of photos to go through, or a big thing from high school. And it's just timely that she saw some photos from us being in a Winterfest assembly as Wizard of Oz characters. And, Wicked is out, and social media is all about Wicked right now, and I'm going to go see it this weekend finally. But she was the Cowardly Lion, right? And I was Glinda,
Caroline
the Good Witch.
was Glinda. No surprise there.
Yeah, that was fun. We wrote the script and did a whole little play, and so I thought that was timely. She said those to me. But yeah, we're going to pick your brain all about performance, and we see this in really just mindset and stress relief, and under stress in training and performance, like in a team sport or individual sport. But also, I think a lot of our patients and clients would benefit from this just in everyday life, high stress situations.
I think too is, a lot of what people are trying to build in their regular life is some resiliency too. I think we have so many different conflicts and just obstacles in our life, and how we respond and really frame those different obstacles really can give us either a win or a net negative out of each situation. But, before we dive into all that, let's hear a little bit more about your background and what you're currently working with.
Yeah. So obviously Disney on Ice, I was a figure skater growing up in Raleigh, and I did struggle figuring out how to compete essentially, and how to kind of put all the pieces together in the moments when it counts. And so I feel really fortunate that I had exposure to sports psychology, which was not definitely not as normal as it is now, back in 2002, 2003. But when I learned oh my gosh, there's actually things we can do to manage and understand all the thoughts going through your mind, or the feelings you're having, or why your body feels different on a performance day compared to a normal training day. I was like, this is amazing. Sign me up for that. I got super interested in it. And so, it was a game changer for me as an athlete. I think it helped me stay in the sport and continue skating through college, which I did synchronized team skating in college.
Ooh, high
that
pressure.
Sounds impossible. I don't
high
even
pressure.
How do you even do that?
It's like synchronized swimming.
Yeah. Well, how do they do that?
Highly recommend
to
YouTube that. Yeah. Yeah. There's 16 athletes on the ice at once. So kind of a combination of all the disciplines, but if you think about synchronized swimming and put that on frozen water, that's synchronized skating.
I have a fear. I kind of have a fear of line dances because everyone is so synchronized and I cannot keep up. I'm always messing that up.
Is that why you're so hateful towards them?
Yeah. I'm like always asking when we're going to a wedding, I'm like, are you going to have line dances? Cause no one really likes those. Like, well, maybe we'll have one or two. And I was, I'm trying to, pick which one it is.
So those are really high pressure situations. So in college, did you have a sports psychologist meet with you all? Like, were you exposed to that in college?
We didn't have someone consistently work with our team. We had access to, there was someone at the counseling center on campus, which again, like I've talked to my coaches more recently, and it's amazing how much the campus resources have progressed for student athletes. There's still a long way to go, but it's so different. And when I was there, there was one provider in the counseling center who had a sports psychology specialty. So I did meet with him a few times, and there also was a really strong master's program in sports psychology, where I went to school, Miami University in Ohio. And so they always had students like doing projects with student athletes, like the grad students.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I was so interested in it, I would always like sign up to be a grad student, person that they did a project with. So I got different kinds of exposure to it that way.
Personal question here. Would you mind sharing some of the things that you were dealing with that, you were working with the sports psychologist on?
Yeah. Well, one that I think is super common is in synchronized skating, it's very common that you share spots. Right. So similar to any team sport, right? You always have more players on the team that are rostered than the number that are going to be performing in the game or the performance. So my freshman year, I shared a spot, and essentially you're switching in and out of the line throughout practice every day. And then by the time you get to competition, the coaches decide who's going to skate in the competition or not. So managing just the daily anxiety of that, and kind of relationship with my swing partner, we called it, it was really helpful working through some of that stuff.
Wow.
Was that relationship supportive, or was it kind of, tense at times? Because, you are competing, but you also want to be
a good teammate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So my swing partner from my freshman years is in my phone as other half.
Oh,
That's what we decided. And I'm so grateful to her because we both kind of decided like we have to support each other. And so, and we talk maybe once a year, but she's still in my phone as that. And that's, we started to call each other that throughout the year. And it worked out where we ended up, I skated one program typically for most of the competitions. I skated one program and she skated the other. Actually, I think that was for every competition. And so, yeah, but it's definitely it's a conflict between your individual goals and contributing to the success of the team.
I'm sure you can relate to with your team sport.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always feel, there's always the risk of doing too much especially in my sport, or you could think about in like basketball or soccer, right? You want to take the shot, you want to, make the basket, and you get rewarded for making more baskets, but it can also hurt the team if you take the shot and it misses, right? So it's always this balance between using your tool set that you have, but also keeping the team in the front of your mind. And sometimes when you know that you're maybe a little bit toward the back of the roster as far as playing time, you have to really walk this balance of pushing to earn more playing time, but also, not overextending yourself and, but also, showing enough. So it could be really a delicate thing to balance, and stressful, which is what we're talking about, right? Like how it contributes to anxiety and just where do you fit in?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah. And I always say now, I wish I had more of this perspective when I was younger. But I work with a lot of teams now. And this is a huge issue. I call it the playing time problem. And I'm always trying to find solutions. And, uh, I think we have a very individualistic society. And this can also come from messages of parents. Like it's confusing and conflicting to hear that your kid is going to be on the bench the whole game and you're investing all this time and money. But I like to say there's a million and one ways to contribute to a championship.
mm-hmm.
Only one of those ways is minutes in the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone wants to contribute to a success of something that's greater than them.
Yeah.
And so if we can really instill that and foster that, there's lots of examples of athletes really taking ownership of their role, and navigating the tension between that individual goal and contributing to the success of the team, and kind of understanding realistically where they stand in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fear of making mistakes. I'm sure we talked about this a little bit. Like, what are things you do with teams and go over with teams to help with that stress or that individual stress of like letting their team down or making mistakes or contributing to the team? What are some things you go over?
Yeah, so that comes back to the polyvagal theory, and
I'd never heard of
nervous
this, by the way.
Yeah, we don't know what that is.
This is brand new.
It is new too. I want to say some of the originating articles on this theory came out around 2009, 2010, by Dr. Stephen Porges. So it is cutting edge, I would say.
Yeah,
Cool.
well, walk us through it a little bit. For those who who've never heard of it like us.
This is all about regulating the nervous system. So when we're talking about stressful situations, that was just one example in sport when you're fighting for playing time and managing pressure situations and goals of the team versus individual goals of yourself. That can create the perception and some situations of a threat. And so our nervous system has a very specific response to that. But we typically think of that as fight or flight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people have heard
like
of
an animal's chasing us, that threat.
Yeah. And so polyvagal theory is really a more nuanced understanding of what's happening with the different parts of our nervous system and how we might be responding in different circumstances, depending on whether we feel a sense of safety or a sense of potential danger. So we have this thing called neuroception, which means that our neuroception is this like network of sensors throughout our whole body. And something I love about this is in the theory as a whole, is it really is about the connection of the mind and the body.
Mm-hmm.
We typically think the mind is one and the same with the brain, but our mind really kind of works throughout our entire nervous system, which is throughout our whole body. And so when you think about an athlete's bread and butter, it's that mind-body connection. And that's where I think this framework applies so well in the sport and performance setting. And so our neuroception is all of our senses, right? Not just what we see and what we hear, but what we feel and what we smell and what, sensing things in our external environment and sensing things in our internal environment, right? Signals that our bodies are sending internally. Our neuroception is constantly scanning that internal and external environment for danger or safety.
Mm-hmm.
Right? To have a sense of, do we need to be prepared for a threatening situation, or can we know that we are safe? And So with that, then these different parts of our nervous system responds based on whether we're perceiving danger or safety, or kind of somewhere along that spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And we can think of really like these 3 different states in terms of a ladder. So at the bottom of the ladder, we would call that state the immobilized state. Okay. And this would be like, really, if you think of symptoms of depression, if you think of kind of being shut down completely,
Mm-hmm.
that's our immobilized state. There's a licensed social worker. Her name is, I believe, Deb Dana. I might need to double check that, but she is an expert at this, and she describes it so well. Thinking of the analogy of like a house, right? So bottom of the ladder, it's a house and you've gone on vacation. And so you've turned the heat down just enough so that the pipes don't burst,
Mm-hmm.
right? You've turned most of the lights off, just enough to keep the house like alive, right? But nobody's home.
Mm.
That would be kind of our immobilized state. Then we go up the ladder to our mobilized state. And this is the sympathetic nervous system coming into play here. And you could think about this as like the alarm system in the house,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the mobilized state is designed to sound the alarm when an intruder comes into the house, right? That's really what that sympathetic nervous system is for. And then if we go up the ladder to the 3rd step, that brings us to our relaxed state. Sometimes this is called the rest and digest state. And this is the parasympathetic nervous system, or we would call this really the ventral vagal pathway. And so that is the state where we are really kind of in our flow.
We're thriving.
Right? Yes. We're relaxed. We're connected to others. But some people also call this the social engagement system. When we're on that 3rd step of the ladder, we are creative. We are energized. We're curious. We're hopeful. We're thriving, exactly what you said in that state.
So this is interesting because usually we're always talking about just the 2, right? The sympathetic, the fight or flight, and then the rest and digest. So it's kind of adding that 3rd element of immobilized is the main kind of difference.
Yeah,
and there's overlap in all 3, of course.
There's overlap, right? So the other piece
this
is
a Venn diagram, right? This whole the way that this is represented, 3 circles that are overlapping.
Yeah, that we're looking at.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah, I did send you a Venn diagram. So numerous ways to think about it, right? You have the ladder, the house. The house is, so like when we're in that relaxed state, you're home and it's cozy and the lights are on and, right, like you know the alarm system is there in case anything bad happens, but you are functioning and thriving and enjoying your home.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in comfort. You're in that comfort zone.
Yeah. But it's not an either or. So I think oftentimes we think about like, okay, I'm either in fight or flight or I'm in rest and digest. And polyvagal theory suggests that we have these hybrid states as well, where a really interesting one to me, play and dance is considered a hybrid state of being mobilized and relaxed. Right. So that sympathetic nervous system is working and our relaxed system, the ventral vagal pathway, is working to kind of down regulate, any extremity in the mobilization.
That makes sense. So for athletes or something like that, that's where it'd come to play, kind of getting them into that zone or practicing getting them into that zone.
Is that the interplay between relaxed and mobilized when you're in flow state, or?
That's a good question. I don't want to overspeak because I haven't seen that be associated directly with flow state. But if you think about the term kind of relaxed intensity,
I mean, that's how I feel when I'm sort of operating at my best. I'm not really concerned or stressed. I'm just kind of vibing and, having a good time playing and just,
but still disciplined and like
still disciplined.
Yeah.
And
kind of being aware and that's really interesting. And so your job would be kind of, well, with these athletes, I'm guessing, to get them into this state through some sort of practice with the vagus nerve. Is that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it really starts actually with awareness and paying attention to your body. So a question I would ask an athlete at the start at any age is, what are your symptoms? So on a performance day or on a game day, I'm curious about this for you, Taylor. What are your symptoms on a game day? Like, what actually happens physiologically or physically in your body?
Yeah, I would say it differs between the sort of importance of the game. And this is also something that I've personally worked with a lot with myself to try to make even the highest level games more like a practice. And so I think in the past, I would certainly, when I was a younger player, as we would progress through, let's say like the national championship, I think I would have a little bit more like, distress as far as like gastrointestinal distress. And now I would say it's really a lot more just like any other training session, where I think I've gotten to the point where playing in these bigger games is more of just like, I'm going to have fun, have the right like mindset around it. And then that tends to make my body feel just like, invigorated, as opposed to, a lot of like tension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we break it down just to the symptom level, right? Like there's been a shift from some gastrointestinal. So that might be the form of like butterflies in your stomach, or you feel, I can't tell you how many rooms I've been in with groups of athletes where they didn't know that everyone feels like they have to go to the bathroom a lot on a game day.
Yeah. Big connection.
You just want to be kind of empty. So, you don't want to be carrying around extra weight, like whether it's like an ounce of pee or whatever, you don't want to carry around anything extra that slow you down.
Yeah. But there's that connection. I mean, because I think people aren't connected. So many people are not feeling that connection, or that's an effect of stress.
Yeah. And we don't talk about it. Right. And so when I ask, like, did you know that that's normal? Oh my gosh. Oh, everyone. Okay. Yeah. And everyone does experience different. Like you might have more tension, or you might feel like you have to pee all the time, even though you don't. But these symptoms can tell us if we are more in a mobilized state, or if we're more, if we are in a hybrid between immobilized and mobilized. That's called the freeze state, right? So fight or flight actually kind of caters to certain types of sports, especially if you're supposed to be aggressive or you're supposed to run. And but athletes can struggle more with the freeze state, and our brains decide for us what's the safest state to put you in at this point, right? That's not an active, conscious choice. Yeah. So that free state would be more like sometimes your legs feel numb, or you might feel heavier, or you just literally feel like you can't move that well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, talking about, different sports catering to different states, I can tell, playing ultimate and playing disc golf is basically the same thing. I'm throwing the disc at a target, but I struggle, especially in competition with disc golf, because my heart rate like wants to ramp up, but what I really need to be is just really calm and relaxed, and just, if you get too amped up in disc golf, you're just going to shank the shot, or like put too much effort into it. And I
because it's not running sport.
And exactly.
Yeah.
I've shared on this podcast before how like I've gone through situations where I've just developed this like insane yips or grip lock where I'm just like, I cannot release the disc out of my hands. And it's just this heightened anxiety for performance. Whereas when I'm playing Ultimate, like one way to deal with that is just run harder, you know, just like run it out of yourself and like put that, all of that energy and effort into your legs. And then, you know, there's lots of ways that you can play the game where you're not actually having to be as precise with your throws. So, and, you know, I just find that I don't have that as much when I'm playing Ultimate, but sometimes in those higher level, like golf or disc golf tournaments, I'll definitely feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking this is great for runners too. I mean, all sports obviously, but runners, especially we with our nutrition counseling, we see a lot of runners. And it's interesting because we always just associate, or they might always associate what they're eating, you know, what they're doing to prep for the run, whatever it is, 5K, marathon. Oh, but I get like my GI doesn't, you know, it's always like at, you know, 8 a.m. this time, or if I wake up earlier, if I do this. And some of that could be related to nutrition, related to what they had the night before. But I'm thinking with this, like a lot of it probably has to do with, you know, their mind-body connection.
And you're like,
before the race.
You should eat some carbs before you go run a marathon. They're like, no, carbs. That makes me, you know, that makes me feel terrible.
Or whatever it is. Or if they're like, well, if I don't have an empty stomach, I just, you know, I have to have an empty stomach before it, or I'll have to go to the bathroom. And it's like, this could be used, I think, for those, for a lot of those people.
We were, my team, we were sort of passing around this book called The Confident Mind. As we were preparing for this tournament. And one of the things that it talked about in there with the butterflies was if you just reframe that as, you know, and we to preface this, we had to all take this exam where we talked about, you know, said we weren't going to take any performance enhancing drugs. And, you know, it went through this whole thing with, you know, performance enhancing drugs. But in the book, they talked about the butterflies is a performance enhancing drug. It is blood being shunted away from your stomach. And so your muscles start to feel weird in your stomach, but it's just going to your skeletal muscle at that point.
So you can run.
So you're going to have more juice in your legs. And so at some point in the tournament, like when the game started getting more and more tense, like we just started saying, free drugs, you know, you're getting free drugs at this point. You know?
Yeah. It's a lot. Your body knows what to do naturally.
Yeah.
Your mind just has to be there. So how do we connect them more?
Exactly. Yeah. And this all comes back to perception of safety versus threat, right? Because one of the things that happens very common is we feel these symptoms and they don't feel comfortable or good. Like, you know, I'm sure if you could choose how you feel when you wake up the morning you have like a big presentation at work, nobody's going to say they want to feel like their muscles are shaking or tense or
they have to run to the bathroom,
or that their stomach hurts. Like nobody's, you know, that's like, nobody's going to sign up for that.
Right.
But so what can happen is we feel these things, we don't talk about them, it feels uncomfortable, and then it's like, oh no, this isn't how I normally feel. And all of a sudden we're not just perceiving the event that's coming up as potentially threatening, we're perceiving our body's reaction as also threatening.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that there's something wrong with me, right? Like
exactly.
Most, like when I see someone up on stage, like they don't look this way. Like what's wrong with me that I feel this way? And
that negative self-talk.
So Lauren, what are some strategies that you use to help people sort of, I don't know what the right way of saying it, like activate this ventral vagal complex or stimulate it?
Yeah. So this awareness is key, right? So if we can start to actually pay attention to the body to identify what state we might be in a given moment, then we can know more of what the body is perceiving, right? Like what our neuroception is perceiving and what our body really needs. And at the most basic level, a first step is to let your body know that you are, in fact, safe to do the task, whatever it is, right? So letting your letting your body know you're safe. A really simple way to do that is actually with your eyes to look all the way behind you. I'll bring the mic with me. All the way behind you to your left. Look all the way behind you to your right. And notice, actually pick out
turning our heads.
things that are behind you. Okay. Nothing is chasing you. Right. And we can use all of our senses because our neuroception happens through all of our senses. We can use all of our senses to help us to know and trust that we are safe in this moment right here. And we can use kind of reminders of all of our preparation for whatever we have coming up, to know and trust that we are safe to do the task. So that would be number one. And then number two is there's tons of strategies out there now to actually activate what we call this ventral vagal complex. Right. So
like the vagal
just to
toning,
kind of back
is that
up,
the same, like vagal toning exercises? Or is that different?
Yeah. Yeah. And so just to back up on the vagal nerve, like it's kind of a hot topic, I guess, or it's a buzzword, the vagal nerve.
People are making lots of money off the vagus nerve these days.
I know.
Like one of my patients was told to buy this stimulator. And
I said, ear stimulator?
Well, no, it was like this little thing that she just pressed against her neck. And she had to rent it. It was like this little thing that she was renting for like $400 a month. And I was like, I don't know. I think there's probably another
other stuff you could do. Yeah, but this is great. We want to know more because we've heard more about this. Sometimes I give recommendations to my patients, but explain this. We'd love to know more that you could maybe do for free.
Yeah, there's a lot. So the vagal nerve is actually like a network of nerves, but it's the largest network of nerves in our parasympathetic nervous system, right? So that's the part of the nervous system that's connected with that relaxed state. And it connects like from our brainstem through our neck, our chest, our heart, our lungs, and our digestive tract, right? So key organs in the body that it connects. And we have what we would call the ventral vagal nerve, which is in the front part of the body, and the dorsal vagal nerve is in the back part of the body. And the ventral vagal nerve is what we want to activate because that's associated with the parasympathetic nervous system. The dorsal actually is associated with the immobilized state and helps us go back and forth between relaxed and mobilized.
Interesting.
I think the valuable kind of takeaway with the ventral vagal nerve being in the front of the body is that's where we experience more openness. And anything we do to activate the vagal nerve and the ventral vagal complex, we're kind of opening ourselves up to experience.
This is like yoga. Yeah.
Open your heart center.
Yeah. Yeah.
Create an intention for this practice.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like the breathing exercises, or what are your favorites that you recommend for people?
Yeah, I think a really simple one is temperature change, specifically to a cold temperature. And I am not going to be able to tell you all the science behind this for how this activates the vagal nerve. But I think it triggers the nervous system to regulate itself, right? Because when you when you move from a warm to a cold environment, your body's going to automatically start working to regulate its temperature.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Wouldn't it be like protecting the sensitive organs by, putting more blood flow to that area in general? Like, raising
that makes sense.
Raising your heart rate, protecting your digestive system a little bit.
Yeah. Is this why the ice baths have gotten popular too? The cold, getting your body into that cold temperature.
Cold plunge.
Yeah, the cold plunge. Yeah, whatever you call them.
Yeah.
Taylor's a big fan of
I'm
that.
a big fan.
But I've heard
We're about
this
to get
too.
our plunge on over here.
Yeah, he just ordered one actually. But we've heard about this. This makes sense because I hear about this with child rearing too and parenting. Like if a kid is dysregulated, get them outside. And I think that's slightly different, but also get them in a cold temperature. I have heard of, getting their hands cold, putting ice packs in their hands to calm them down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Having instant ice packs around can be super helpful, and you just crack them to that cold temperature, and you can put them on your cheekbones or the side of your neck.
Very cool. So that could be helpful for anyone, not just athletes, but like someone, who has high stress situations at work or on their drive to work. If they feel these symptoms or before events, like that could be a great simple solution or something that might help.
What about you were talking about like people yelling?
Well, like on their way to work, I've heard like humming, gargling, yelling, humming. Singing really loudly, humming kind of vibrates, I guess, and gets the vagus nerve. Do you recommend that as well?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm so zen, because I pop off in my car.
Like singing loudly?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
We're rocking out. If I'm solo.
And just scream.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the kids might call it screaming.
Preschool is always like, oh, y'all are really jamming out as he's dropping off the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's theorizing that ventral vagal complex has some connection to our vocal cords.
Okay.
And so humming, singing, gargling, and what I would say is just to pay attention, and try it, right? Try humming your favorite song and notice how your body feels before and after you do that.
Yeah, it's worth a try.
Yeah. What's interesting about that, just to, have a non-scientific theory about that, but if you think about kind of that parasympathetic, and you were talking about that openness to connection, it would make sense then that our vocal cords, which is about us communicating with each other, connecting, talking with each other, sharing experience, it seems like that would sort of make sense as,
like isolate, like when people are isolated or during the pandemic, right? Yeah. Like we were isolated, maybe a lot of people started working from home, not as social, not talking as much. And a lot of that piece has stayed. I know some businesses are requiring people to be back, but you and I work from home, Lauren, most of the time. And so, I could see how that would be connected for sure. Being in a higher stress state.
We just made a new theory.
Yeah.
And it aligns. It aligns with the polyvagal theory, I would say, because it's so vocal cord, neck movement, and facial expression are theorized to be all connected to that ventral vagal complex. And so the cool thing about that is activating that nerve or that neural system helps us regulate our own nervous system. It also helps us to co-regulate. And what I mean by that is connect with someone else and send signals of safety.
Oh.
When we are more regulated, we're more capable then of sending signals of safety, friendliness, openness, right? To, for example, on a team, to your teammates.
Right. Or a parent.
Or from a coach to their athlete.
Yeah, that's why they say regulate yourself as a parent.
Yeah.
Regulate yourself first and then talk to your kid when you're too stressed out.
Do you want to try that again?
Yeah. Do you want a do-over, please?
Lauren, one thing I've talked about with my patients, because the vagus nerve is a cranial nerve, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
the 10th cranial nerve, I think.
10th cranial nerve. And upper trap is activated by cranial nerve 11. And so one of the things that I've talked about with my patients, and this probably applies to the vagus nerve, is that how, so the cranial nerves are what activates all of our facial features and can really kind of, it helps move around our eyes. It does all of our senses, but it also activates all the muscles in your face. And so, I've always talked to my patients about, how you can tell if someone's happy, you can tell if someone's stressed or anxious just by looking at them. Like you just show them a picture of someone. And I've always equated that to the upper trap, which is, that muscle just that connects your head to your shoulders. Since that's innervated by a cranial nerve, like when you're stressed, that muscle is just way more active, and you end up with your shoulders pulled up into your ears. And I wonder, if the vagus nerve just kind of acts in that same way of, just like your face.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It could. So what do you do with teams in this setting? I mean, kind of like we were going into the connecting with others, having to activate the ventral vagal complex in team settings. Like, for instance, Taylor, when they were at Worlds, y'all did a great job of doing these circles and talking about stuff. But like, what would you do with a team to help with that?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to creating the sense of safety. And if you really think about it, our neuroception is informed by our evolution as humans. And if you go back thousands of years when we lived in caves and forests and all of that, like if you were rejected from your in-group, good luck living.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that was a death sentence.
That's why we have such a hard time with rejection.
Yeah, our bodies literally react in the same ways, as if it is a life or death threat, the possibility of rejection from your in-group. And we see that in neural scans of the same parts of our brain light up in social rejection as they would with physical pain.
Wow.
I felt like I was going to die when I got cut from my soccer team when I was 16.
Yeah.
It was one of the most horrible things ever. You definitely feel
a
that.
hard time of life. 16, teenager.
Yeah. I know you've never been cut from anything, Caroline. She's
Yes, I have.
She's always been promoted to the captain.
Yes, I have. No.
Yeah, no, I went through a really similar experience being cut in my sophomore year of college, and then came back to the team junior and senior year.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, not for me. I just switched sports.
It was a journey.
You didn't power through. You're like, all right, screw you. I'm trying something new.
Yeah. But I think part of that experience too is the quote unquote worst possible thing that could happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your world. And you realize that you're still alive and you still have connections and people. I don't know if this would have been the case for you, Taylor. I think for me, I had teammates that continued to be there for me throughout that time. That was just, I can't understate the impact of that.
Mm-hmm. I would say no. I did not have those teammates that like stuck it out with me. It was a bunch of high school punks, but it was.
Yeah, we were a little older.
Yeah. I mean, when this has happened to me at like various phases, and I've continued to play sports throughout my life, and so there was a time when I was 35 that I was finally put out to pasture from the competitive men's team, and I remember I was more able to deal with it at that point. But I still wanted my teammates to like reach out to me and say, hey, don't worry about it. Like we got your back forever and da 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 da. And, luckily for me, I get to continue to play in these different divisions of, these age restricted divisions. So, but I have used that a lot. I've used that analogy in, talking to a lot of younger athletes as they're going through the stress of recovering from these different injuries. And you can feel the pressure on them to get back as quickly as possible, even though their body is saying, no, you're not ready. The bone is literally not healed yet, but the pressure to get back because they feel like, if I'm not back, then I'm not getting reps, and then I'm going to get cut from the team, and then my life is over, and then my whole sense of self is gone. And, just that fear of rejection is just like so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So
it is.
And that goes back to, I guess we were talking about the connection circles or like building trust as a team and that sense of safety for each other. But when someone's out, for injury, they're not a part of that unless they do continue to go to practice just to be involved. I mean, what do you recommend for those people who maybe are out for injury or some situation, like do you encourage them to keep engaging or let the team engage with them or to help with morale?
Yeah. Yeah. I think coaches play a big role in facilitating that, or not, right? And I've seen it play out where an athlete is injured and they're not allowed to even be at practice. That can be really, really tough.
That's
the
some
better
old
case
school
scenario,
1980s stuff right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it still happens, but not as much, I would say. I think that the better case scenario is just finding creative ways to keep the players engaged and connected, and having more choice in how many practices they attend or how they want to be involved, even giving them a role to watch practice and take notes and have, even have a conversation, whether that's with the head coach or an assistant coach at the end of practice about what they observed or what ideas they have, ways to get them involved in, again, contributing to the success of the team in ways besides being on the field of play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. That idea of just like being included, I think is so important. And, Caroline, we keep sort of coming back to these connection circles. And one of my teammates who really introduced the concept to our team and to some other teams around the triangle. And now it's actually encouraged in league play for us to do these sort of community circles. And it's funny, he always starts it out as the same way. He's always like, the community circle was, before there were jails and justice systems, you had the circle, and it was a way to resolve conflict. And it was a way for people to, figure out their differences, without, going to combat or fighting each other. And so it's a place to be really open and humble. And we usually, we kind of joke that they're trust building circles, but I really feel like that has made such a difference on the teams that I've played on that, employ these. And you just like, oh, so-and-so's dealing with that. I'm dealing with that too. Like, I didn't really bring it up, but like, I can relate to how they're feeling. And do you recommend these with some of the teams that you coach? And then what are some of the like best practices for that? Because to be honest, like we mostly use them to kind of get to know each other, but how would you recommend, using them in a conflict situation where like one player is really upset with someone else and they, we need to resolve the situation?
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. So I think reps in getting to know each other and building the trust and just getting reps in that is so valuable for building trust and giving a structure for teammates to get to know each other in a way, and we'd like to think that everyone would come into practice and like have a question in mind that they're going to ask someone that they didn't talk to last week. Right. But that is not our nature. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to kind of create structure for this connection to happen, but then let it happen organically within the structure. Mm-hmm. Right. So it sounds like with your team, like the structure is the community circle. And if I'm understanding it right, like everyone is in their kind of small group circles.
No, we're just in like right? one big circle. And then there's
circle?
A prompt and we just go around the circle and it takes forever, but it's okay. Yeah. We're all, looking at the clock. Let's make this a short question.
Yeah. Cause people want to talk.
Yeah, exactly.
But they don't know how to initiate that on their own. Right. Yeah. So one of the ways I do that might help it go a little faster is I call it connection questions. And I credit one of my colleagues, Dr. Nicole Davies, for introducing this to me, but I partner people up. So you might have an outer circle and an inner circle, and everyone has a partner. And you ask a question and they have 30 seconds for both partners to answer the question to each other. And then you rotate. So
you
the
shift
inner
the
circle would
circle.
rotate to one person over, the outer circle stays where they are, and then you ask another question and 30 seconds for both partners to answer that question. And then you rotate again. So you're talking to maybe half of your teammates throughout that exercise, answering and hearing their answer to a different question each time. And you can start out with really simple questions like what's your typical morning routine? But then you end up with like you
gets
get
real
deep. Oh yeah.
I mean, our guys are crying. People are,
But that's so cool because that is different than that's one-on-one versus everyone listening to response and like no one else talking.
The turbocharged circle.
It's like, what is that? Dating
that's speed dating.
Yeah, like speed dating or something.
Yeah. I love that. I'm definitely gonna use that. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I've done to help create sense of safety in a team is to have everyone write a hope and a fear on a note card. And then they crumple up the note cards, put them in the middle, and everyone grabs someone else's note card. They haven't put their names on it. And then they read a teammate's hope and fear. And it can be a way to really see, typically there's a lot of alignment in what the fears are. And for people to see, okay, I'm not the only one that's afraid of disappointing my teammates.
Have you come across any research that has discussed the motivations of athletes as being like the question I would love to know is like how much of an athlete's motivation is driven by a desire for success or to like get away from a fear, like a fear of failure? Like how much of their like motivation to train is to succeed versus not lose? Or, and those two things are kind of the same, but I feel like when you're there's like a different aura around playing to win than like playing to not lose or like playing to like not expose yourself. And I feel like the best performers are just more driven to that. And so is there a way, I guess you do it probably through like some of your questions that you're asking to kind of diagnose that and really try to shift that mindset. But do you come across that a lot in your practice or?
Yeah. And if you think about it, that playing not to lose, or even playing to like you don't want winning to be a relief from your suffering.
Love that. Yeah.
That's the case for a lot of people, right? Yeah. Like, when you get the win, it's like a relief. Like I can let out all this pressure, but that relief only lasts. It doesn't last very long.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
So playing to win, when you're playing to win, winning is much more part of the process, or pushing to win is much more part of the process. And there's even finding the tiniest little things that are enjoyable about the process. And if you think back to that, to the polyvagal theory and being in that hybrid state of mobilized. So my sympathetic nervous system is activated, right? My heart rate is increased. I'm having more blood flow to the big muscle groups. But I'm also, the ventral vagal complex is also activated, and I'm relaxed and I'm feeling safe and I'm connected and creative and engaged. When we're in that hybrid state, we're really like, there's enjoyment in the process there.
Yeah. Did you have fun?
Yeah.
And did you do your best? That's what we've been
that's what I was
asking Bennett, and then I heard him talk to his team about that at the end, even after they lost, like, but we're here to have fun and we're here to play our best. So I guess that's kind of like in that combo state.
I also think, something you said too, that's probably why it's much easier to play above your level as the underdog than to play above your level as the front runner, because, it's that whole, what's the expectation? And I try to talk to my team a lot about that. And sadly, we just, came up short. We, lost in the finals to a team that we had beaten in pool play. And, if you watch the game, it was just not us. We came out and we were, having very uncharacteristic turnovers, mental mistakes, going deep into the hole. And I think going into that game, I think part of that was we were wearing the USA uniform. We were wearing the Team USA uniform. And with that comes an expectation for success, an expectation that we're going to win in these games. And, that pressure I just don't think that elicits the same optimized performance as coming in there relaxed and let's just take it one point at a time. Just a normal game. It's just practice. And what was funny is that, we were down 8-4 at half, which is an enormous, deficit to overcome. And one of our captains was like, all right, well, just guess what? Like everyone's expecting us to lose this game 15-7. Everyone's expecting us to lose this game. And, there's no one thinks that we're going to win. So drop the expectation on yourself that you think you're going to win. And what do you know? Like we start clawing back and start playing better. And then we literally had the disc to tie the game at the end of the game and, came up short. But, we won the second half, going away. And, if we had started the game that way, like, who knows what would have happened. But I do think it's so much harder to like be, have those high expectations for yourself than to be the underdog.
Well, I think the one takeaway I wanted to take from this circle too is like Lauren and I were talking about earlier, how great this is for the younger generations. You have some younger guys on your team, but like even the young, like athletes in their 20s, college age kids, high school athletes who are so used to talking through a phone, a screen, and to gain confidence, but also that communication to, just learn to work as a team better and have that support and have that openness. And I think more and more we're going to see, whether it's in the team, like athlete environment or at work, like work team building, doing exercises like that, I think is so important to build trust when everyone's used to texting, emailing, working remote. And although
chain effect, we're going to do some speed dating.
Although some people don't really want to do it and be open, but like, for team building activities, I can see how this could be really helpful, especially for the younger generations.
Yeah.
Yeah. We tend to be really quick to judge the younger generation, right? Whichever generation that is at a given time.
We're old curmudgeons.
I know. Well, millennials are off the hook now that we're all judging Gen Z.
Yep.
So, but it's the environment that they grew up in completely, right? It's not a character judgment. It's just that they have fewer reps of in-person communication. And
throw COVID on there.
Yeah, exactly. And so creating structure again to give them reps in that in-person communication can not only help them become more comfortable with that, but you're building trust in the process.
Yeah, that's so cool.
To close out, what advice would you give to your 15-year-old self today, having your PhD in sports psychology? What would you go back and tell? That's a loaded question, Taylor. Yeah, what would you go back and don't do it?
She knows too much.
I would say, and I think if there's one takeaway from our conversation today, I would want my younger self to know to listen to your body and pay attention to it, not with the perspective that anything is wrong with what you're experiencing, but get to know what your body is telling you and know that you have power to respond to those actual needs. And there are billion-dollar industries that are centered around getting us to not feel our bodies.
Yeah, that's so true.
Like feel your body with curiosity, not with judgment.
Yeah.
And respond to that, right? So learn when your body is telling you you're perceiving something dangerous, respond to that by letting it know it's safe and picking a strategy to regulate, and stepping forward into that experience. To your point about expectations, I think it's important to have standards, and those standards get developed in our habits and how we show up in the day to day. And then those standards don't change when it's a performance situation. But in terms of expectations, even when we have an expectation that we're not going to be so good, or an expectation that we are going to be great, and I'm going to convince myself to be confident because I'm going to just have this expectation that it's all going to work out. Stepping back from that and just opening yourself up to the experience and trusting yourself with each step in that experience. And you can build trust with yourself by paying attention to your body, learning how to respond to it. Kind of that, really cultivating a good relationship with yourself as much as you might be cultivating trusting relationships with your teammates or your coaches or your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, such good advice.
Lauren, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And if any listeners want to know more about Lauren, her website is www.McHenryMentalPerformance.com. And yeah, you do remote, you do virtual as well as, in person.
I do.
So that is great to know. So if anyone wants to meet with her or know more about what she does, is very interesting stuff. So it was great having you on today. And
this was so fun.
Yeah, y'all see each other this weekend. Don't act like this is goodbye.
Next weekend. She's coming into town. Yes, we're gonna have a girls' afternoon.
Yes,
so
can't wait.
I will see you soon. And thanks for the conversation. We learned a lot.
All right, check you later.
Bye.
Thank you, bye.